So our presentation is homelessness with relationship to drugs and abuse. I'm Eleno.
Kevin Stark.
I'm Nick.
Elias.
And I'm Luis.
So to start off, I gave a brief overview on homelessness. The term homelessness was first described in the U.S. for people who would travel from place to place looking for work. This meaning it wasn't like you needed to have a stable home. It was just that you were holding to the long-held ideas of a home life. As time moved on, modern era of homelessness was developed in 1980s, and some of the main factors that were caused by this were gentrification, the institutionalization of the mentally ill, high unemployment rate, and inac inadequate supply of affordable housing options. The importance of homelessness has only grown in the recent years as a lot of individuals, specifically 4,021, 421,000, and chronically homeless individuals, which are 127,000, meaning they constantly don't have a home, have hit record high. And a study I found it made by the National Alliance to Stop Homelessness shows that most of the groups that are impacted with homelessness are groups of color, and their rate compared to white individuals are way higher. And the reason I thought this was important was because racial and ethnic groups are predominantly experience homelessness. And the reason this is because they have a long history of oppression, have been removed from their land or property. The reason I pointed out gentrification was because it was mentioned in our class, in my other sociology class, and they also have inequality when it comes to housing opportunities. Mm. And a study made by Emily Tweed portrays that it's really common to be homeless, have opioid dependence, and have a justice involvement. This is important since homeless people tend to have a higher chance of drug abuse than people who are not. One of the prevalent reasons is that individuals tend to use drugs as a way to cope or relieve stress, and this increases the chances of taking drugs, and they have a decreased motivation to stop or don't have access to treatment. I believe this is very impactful due to 1 out of 3 homeless tend to have problems with drug abuse. I also believe there's a lot of common misconceptions for the homeless since many believe that they don't have jobs, while on the other hand, people tend to work and even have 2 to 3 jobs. 40 to 60% of homeless are currently employed. Another misconception is that homeless people choose to be homeless, which is not true since this is degrading, stressful, and even dangerous. You put a risk to your life. There's no reason for people to accept those conditions out of their own volition, and they are labeled as dangerous criminals among other negative connotations while they are just misunderstood. The last misconception I'm going to talk about is having food shelters. Having shelters and food enables the people to stay homeless, which, on the other hand, I believe it gives a chance to help people in need, allow relationships to form, and I believe it's just they deserve some compassion and to be treated fairly.
All right, so I'm going to talk about the damages. When it comes to damages, with homelessness and drug addiction, Homelessness and drug addiction are strikingly similar. The relationship between these two problems, though, is also extremely complex. Research indicates that factors place individuals at increased risk of homelessness and drug use, which includes family disputes, family breakdown, sexual or physical abuse in childhood or adolescence, a background of local authority care, offending behavior and or experience of prison, lack of social support network, school exclusions, lack of qualifications, mental health problems, poor physical health, and drug or alcohol misuse. For some, drug misuse is a factor in causing homelessness. For others, homelessness induces drug misuse or exacerbates an existing drug problem. Once homelessness and substance misuse have developed, meanwhile, individuals are often caught in a cynical pattern, with each reinforcing the other. Furthermore, homelessness and drug taking may cause and intensify other related difficulties. And continuing with damages, thus homeless people who use drugs frequently experience multiple and interrelated problems above and beyond their lack of shelter and drug taking. These include legal problems, financial problems, health problems, including HIV and AIDS because of the sharing of needles, social problems, family problems. In consequence, they may have complex needs for services such as housing, benefit, food, clothing, healthcare, drug treatments, counseling, and general advice/information. Compounding their difficulties, there is also evidence that homeless drug users exhibit high levels of life-threatening behavior. A study of sheltered homeless men and women in New York found that chronic homelessness heightened the risk of death associated with disease/disability and intravenous drug use. In addition, an American investigation of 640 shelter youth and 600 street youth revealed that homeless individuals who use substance frequently, such as sedatives, hallucinogens, inhalants, were more likely than those who had not used substances to have ever attempted suicide. In addition, Klee and Reed have found that young people who are homeless use illegal drugs as a means of coping or self-medicating, dampening pain, lifting mood, inducing sleep, and offering protective anesthesia against the stressors over which they have little control. As European report by the Fantassa have highlighted, homeless young people sleeping outside and struggling for their daily survival may find that drug and alcohol offer an easy escape to the harsh realities of the street life. Homeless drug users experience difficulties obtaining access to support also. Many services control the admission of people with drug problems and refuse admission to anybody who is intoxicated. So lastly, for this part, homeless people and drug users may be reluctant to use specialist forms of assistance because they do not want to be labeled as or stigmatized. Others may not approach mainstream healthcare providers because they have more pressing priorities, such as seeing accommodations or feeding a drug or alcohol dependence.
Okay, and so then kind of going into one of the other struggles that homeless people may have would be food insecurities. So kind of giving some background to it, malnourishment is an ever-present problem with the homeless people, and they are at risk of being malnourished due to a low income, limited knowledge, and choice of food, and lack of cooking and storage facilities. So with them being on the street, like Louis said, they have other stressors, and so they can't really focus on, procuring food or even a place to cook it or anything like that, and even like a place to put it and have it be safe and not have it risk being stolen. So then, kind of putting, I guess, like a number to this problem, roughly 4.5 million people in America are dealing with some kind of food insecurity, and then about 130,000 people are actually experiencing homelessness. So it's definitely a good chunk of America that's having this problem, which makes it even more concerning. And so then also with this food insecurity, homeless people may feel like they have to steal food in order for them to survive, which can in turn potentially hurt local businesses. So if they steal from these businesses, I mean, they could be losing, some kind of profit, or these, the employees that work there putting their lives at risk. And it's also kind of like sad to hear, but I think what some of these homeless people may be doing is like if they steal the food and then they get caught with it, they would rather go to jail where their conditions are a lot better than being on the street. And so it's just kind of this like whole complex problem with in terms of procuring food. And so then what could be some solutions for this food insecurity? There's actually been billions of dollars in funding that have been raised in providing fresh food and produce. One of the biggest contributors being farmers to families' food box. So farmers they get their produce directly from their farm and they ship it to food shelters where homeless people can access it with ease. Also, really focusing on the actual waste of food. We really want to reduce that from around 30 to 40% does go to waste, which that 40% may not seem like too much, but it can actually be used to feed 2 billion people. So, I mean, would well exceed the people experiencing food insecurity and homelessness in America. And then also kind of focusing on like a smaller portion of the subject. Uh, for children, schools have been providing free lunches for everyone, so that way at least the children have one hot meal to look forward to throughout the day. And these schools are also kind of extending their reach with other programs such as hot suppers for after school, as well as organizing local food drives on a pretty regular basis.
So, my topic is health and treatment. Homeless people suffer from a wide range of health problems, including seizures, musculoskeletal disorders, tuberculosis, and even skin and foot problems. On top of their health problems, many homeless people have to worry about the problem of not having health care. This can cause many of them to rely on using drugs and alcohol to help manage and treat the pain for their injuries. While this helps relieve their pain, it grows into an addiction, which makes it difficult for a doctor to prescribe narcotics due to the patient's history of substance abuse in the past. The majority of homeless people lack health insurance, which causes them to visit the emergency and an average of 5 times a year. Each visit can cost up to $3,000 and up to $18,000 annually for the average user, and up to $44,000 for the most frequent user. As many as 80% of emergency department visits made by people struggling with homeless are for illnesses that could have been addressed through preventive care. The reason most of them don't get the treatment they need could be because of their lack of healthcare or bad experiences. In a study done by Chuck K. Wen, it was stated many homeless participants reported intense emotional response to unwelcoming behavior while seeking healthcare. This negatively influenced their desire to seek healthcare in the future because they felt dehumanized, not listened to, and disempowered. Not only do the homeless not get the help they need, but they also suffer from a decline in mental health. A decline in mental health isn't only experienced after becoming homeless. It could be experienced way before becoming homeless. Veterans are an example of this. Many veterans are involved in intense combat or serve multiple tours of duty. In a study done by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, the single largest healthcare system in the United States, provide how in results during the years 2010 to 2012, about 200,000 veterans were studied. Of those, 13,000 were identified as homeless. War veterans make up 23% of homeless population. This is due to the lack of aid program and program funding that leaves them without shelter. Among the challenges that veterans face when they're returning are finding jobs, remaining steadily employed, and establishing relationships at work. Many of these veterans struggle to get back into the workforce because of chronic health conditions, substance abuse, and mental health illnesses such as PTSD. These circumstances can make it difficult for them to maintain a job, which leads them to be fired and evicted. If they cannot find a job, This actively demonstrates that many veterans are faced with difficulties, and because of this, they could become homeless. I also want to tie in how this kind of relates to Kevin's topic of how the misconceptions. I feel like there's many misconceptions on homeless people. They're called lazy, but a lot of them don't have like the ability to be lazy. They're always on the move. They're always looking for shelter or food. So I found that kind of interesting, and a lot of the homeless people are actually people that lost their housing due to COVID or any other pandemic.
So housing issues. So when we're looking at the solutions towards homelessness, we can consider the problems that many would face if they would apply for housing, which would be these substance abusers often have mental issues that causes them to be evicted. Many have also had prior arrests, which also leads them to become homeless and stay on the streets where they have access to drugs. And most do not have jobs, so their source of income or no source of income, so they have no ability to have any housing resources, so they stay on the streets. What also happens is many use up all the resources and money they once had to buy all these drugs, leading to their addiction and ultimately leaving them homeless. So what happens is many of these homeless people try to seek out housing in shelters, but often these shelters overfill, which leaves them in the streets without the help they need to treat their addictions or the health problems they may have. So the solutions. So many homeless need guidance in order to improve their lives and treat their addictions and health problems. According to Christian G. Schultz article, Homeless and Addiction Causes and Consequences and Intervention, he shares supportive housing can improve abstinence, stable housing, and employment. By having a shelter that is able to give them the support needed, many that are homeless can become motivated to seek employment and stay away from drugs so they no longer have to live on the streets or rely on drugs to give them that sense of security. So types of housing that would benefit the homeless would be shelters that have rehabilitation resources. So if the rehabilitation resources were provided in these shelters, there would be more of a chance for many that are homeless today that keep themselves clean. Another type of housing that would help the homeless would be shelters that are available to all homeless, but they must be alcohol and drug free. So these types of shelters would be available to those that are going through treatment or in the process of going through treatment. And this could motivate many to keep clean so they have a place to stay, and so they're not in the streets. So the rehabilitation. So many homeless are still at risk of relapsing and using drugs again, even after they have become sober. So we still have to look at the many ways for them to stay on the correct path towards them becoming rehabilitated. Because we can see many of these homeless people are in a situation that they're in because of mental disabilities, trauma that they have experienced throughout their life. We can understand that standard rehabilitation that many get through these shelters are as most reliable for option for many, but a new option that many are starting to consider are called harm reduction programs, where homeless people go to these facilities and are in a clean needle program where they are monitored by employees about how much drugs they are consuming, how often, and if this program is benefiting the person. By using clean needles and monitoring the use of drugs in the facility where the amount of drugs is being monitored per person, it could be the beginning of many homeless people's path towards rehabilitation.
So that is the end of our little project, and this is our works cited. So I end it now.
Yeah, and
Yeah.